Okay, as promised, here is your guys' lesson on doing annotations. So let's dive right in because I'm going to try and do this in one shot this time. Little do you guys realize I usually have to do this multiple times when I make recordings. So in Jupyter Ed, there is a pod called IR Annotations. That's Industrial Revolution, IR Industrial Revolution Annotations. Annotating is one of my favorite things in the world. It is so useful to understanding documents. And we're going to be taking a look at an industrial era document today. And our essential question for this unit, what were the impacts of industrialization upon various nations and regions? I'm going to show you guys how to use documents and annotation in order to deepen your understanding. So why do we annotate? It helps us understand sources. It helps us build layers of understanding. It helps capture our thoughts. So one of the things that I say often in class is this idea of thoughts are like clouds. If you don't have any documentation that you captured when they were there, there's no proof you ever had them, right? So if you don't have your thoughts written down on paper, there's no proof for me that you ever had any about the topic that we're talking about or looking into. You need to be writing down this stuff. And writing it down makes it a lot easier because you can't possibly be reasonably expected to read a document, understand a document, analyze a document in your head, identify what's important, make connections to other things, ask questions, and then utilize all of that in writing an essay. Like, you guys like to tell me I'm doing too much. That's doing too much. So annotating is more work up front. And I know somebody out there just sighed and did the teenage trifecta of suck teeth, roll eyes, and sigh, right? It's more work up front, but it makes the end product better. It makes it easier to write essays. And so it makes the other pieces of the process that we go through in order to write more manageable. So yes, it's more work, but it makes the entire project better. Lots of people annotate things already. Whenever you jot things down while you're taking notes and you make a little scribble on the side, you just annotated. When people use recipes in their kitchen and make a little notation on the recipe, less salt, needs more spice, right? That's annotating. People already annotate. I just want you to use it in a way that facilitates your understanding and expands your learning. And it helps you build those layers of understanding. So we're going to talk about annotating, but we're going to talk about primary annotations, secondary annotations, and even tertiary annotations. Stick with me. It'll help. You know, it gives you more resources and things to talk about in your writing. So the more you annotate a document, the more sentences you have for your essays. A lot of you guys try to say everything in a sentence or write everything in one paragraph. That doesn't work. You need to expand your thinking. You need to provide layers of explanation. You need to be able to, you know, make connections. So when we talk about annotations, right, there are different types of annotations, and they are not all the same quality, okay? In middle school, I know because my son is doing this now, and I saw this, and I kind of geeked out a little bit. He's like, Mom, calm down. I already know. Highlighting and underlining can be useful in limited circumstances, but they're passive types of annotations. When you highlight something, when you underline it, it has two main purposes. Highlight something if you read a document and you're like, yes, I want to use that quote. I want to put that into my essay, right? It makes it easy to find the quote. Highlight that. When you need to identify what piece of text you are actively annotating, highlight, underline. But for those of you who think it's okay to just highlight a document all over the place, that doesn't show you understand anything, okay? This isn't kindergarten. Nobody asked you to color a page, right? You want to identify key pieces of information, and you want to utilize them to further your understanding. So you can use passive annotation in conjunction with active annotations. Active annotations where useful stuff is, okay? So here are some examples of active annotations. You can clarify text with use of synonyms. Those of you who have been in my government class and have done the dreaded declaration translation project, that whole step one was clarifying text with synonyms, right? And so on your document, you can, if you write a synonym of another word that helps you understand that selection. This is a process I use a lot when I have to translate texts that in Spanish that are too advanced for me, right? They're going to be words that I don't understand. I'm going to annotate those words with the word in English, right? I don't want to do that for the whole document because then it's just scribbly mess. But you know, in certain key locations, it can be profoundly helpful. Ask questions, especially how and why questions. We're not talking about answering questions that you clearly know the answer to. Don't ask questions you know the answer to. That's not useful. But you should be questioning your learning. You should be taking the information that you already know and the information that you're learning, and you should be putting them together and see kind of how they fit together like a puzzle, right? Are there gaps? Does it not fit together? Are there things that don't make sense? You know, you should be always aiming for how and why questions. Always, always, always. If you're not questioning, you're not learning. It means that you're passive. You're just letting education wash over you. You're not actively engaged in it. And so that's probably going to be boring, first of all. And you're not going to learn as much. Sorry, that's the truth. So make sure you're constantly questioning things. If you see words you don't know, define them. Don't do that nonsense cut and paste from the internet kind of definition. Like, that's some BS right there. When you cut and paste, did you learn anything? No. You just kind of checked something off on your task list. There was no learning there. That doesn't count for dip diddly squat, all right? Put that definition in your own words. Internalize it and show that you really understand. That counts, right? Summation. Put text in your own words. So you can sum up a whole document, you could sum up a paragraph, but summation is very helpful. Record reactions. If you read something and you think, well, that makes me angry, okay, go with that, follow that, record your reaction. But you gotta tell me why you're having a reaction. If something makes you angry, why did it make you angry? If you think something is BS, by all means, write down on the paper, F that, that's BS. But why is it BS? You have to provide an explanation for your feelings. You can't just like vomit your feelings all over a page and think that you're going to get credit. You don't. You know, you have to be able to make connections. And one of the things that you guys tend to do is edit yourselves. You don't validate your own knowledge. You know, if you are reading a document and you have outside information that relates, connect that. If you know about like something about industrialization or the Industrial Revolution, connect that to the document. If you can make a connection to another historical event or current events, make that connection. And one of the biggest ways students edit themselves is they invalidate their own knowledge and experience. Education is not just found in this building. Education is not just found via Zooms. Education is anytime you learn and experience something and you get something out of that experience. That is education. So make connections to your own personal experience. That's valid. Don't discount yourself. Your own knowledge counts. You know, for some reason, students think that if it didn't come from here, like if it didn't come from a school, that knowledge somehow can't be applied. Of course it can. You just have to explain the connection, right? So if you are reading something and you have a personal connection, you know something that, you know, similar that happened to you, something that happened to somebody you know, something that's going on in your community, make that connection. Those are valid. And those are usually some of the deepest analysis that we can provide when we start thinking about why things occur. When you make a connection, you have an opportunity to understand something at a much deeper level. You just have to explain it, okay? So we're going to practice this utilizing the now comment link, right? So we're going to look at the Sadler report. Please go into your pod and click on the link. And we are going to use the Now Comment platform, which is a fabulous, fabulous platform that has been introduced to us by Ms. Hernandez-Spear. and she works with Mr. Allison, who set this up. So in front of you, you have the Sadler Committee. And what this is an investigation into the conditions in a textile factory, right? So during the Industrial Revolution, there were many abuses. And after a while, after years and years of abuse, the government kind of started to have these committees that would look into the abuses, and they looked at it in different topics, right? So this Sadler report is on the textile industry, right? Textile cloth. There's also another report, the Ashley Commission on the Mines, and Chadwick report on sanitary problems. Those are like the big three that led to a lot of changes in the Industrial Revolution. What you have in front of you is an account of Mr. Matthew Crabtree. Mr. Matthew Crabtree is 22 years old. He is talking about his occupation from when he was a child. So I'm actually going to take my background off, and I want to show you a less tech version, something you can do with your actual paper as well. So if you like to print out the documents and do them on paper, that is also an option for you. So let me move my chair out of the way. So we have an account by Mr. Matthew Crabtree. He's 22 when he's giving his testimony, but he's talking about from when he was 8 years old. So he's an 8-year-old, he was an 8-year-old child who was working in a factory for a period of 4 years, right? So from the age of 8 to 12, he is working 14-hour days with a 1-hour break. Okay, except for when the factory is busy. Then he's working 16-hour days with a 1-hour break. So I kind of want to show you how to do these different kinds of annotations. And we're going to do them online, and people have already started, but I also want to show you like how to, with your hands, you remember using your hands to do work, right? So with our hands and paper, you can also do the same process. So if we're looking at this, during these long hours of labor, could you be punctual? So one type of annotation might be to say punctual. What does that mean? That's on time. How did you awake? I seldom did awake spontaneously. I was most generally awoke or lifted out of bed, sometimes asleep, by my parents. So it helps if you guys are always in the habit of trying to visualize what you're reading. Paint that picture in your mind. You want to make sure that you are trying to make it like a movie in your head, because it's much easier to remember that than to remember some boring old text on a paper, right? So really like think about that. This is an 8-year-old kid who has to be like lifted out of his bed in the morning by his parents. Think about that. What does that mean for that child? Well, it means that this kid is tired, right? This child is tired. He is beyond just like, I need some coffee in the morning. This child is deeply exhausted. This isn't the, I went to bed late last night. This is, I haven't slept right in months, right? This is, I've been working a grind and I passed empty on the gas tank like years ago. This is very bone deep exhaustion, right? And that's disturbing to hear about a child. So were you always in time? No. What was the consequence if you had been too late? I was most commonly beaten. So between the ages of 8 and 12, if he were late to his job where he spent 14 to 16 hours a day, he would get beaten. Okay? Severely? Very severely, I thought. So let's pause and let's record some reactions. So some of the things we talked about in class, some of the reactions some students had was, that's terrible to beat a child. Right? All on its own. That is terrible to beat a child. And even more so, some people had comments about, he didn't have a real childhood, right? There's a sense of loss of innocence. There's that lost innocence. Was another comment somebody had today, right? So here's our primary annotation, our first one. And the primary leads us to the secondary one. Here, let me tilt this a little bit. So when we take a look at our primary annotation and we analyze that a little bit, that provides additional secondary annotations. And we can even take this more deeply, because I always want you connecting to those Enlightenment ideas: natural rights, rule of law, social contract theory, consent of the governed. Those are the four that we focus on upon this class. So this is a violation of which of those four? Well, the one that should jump out at you first is natural rights. That's a violation of natural rights, right? And how is this a violation of natural rights? Because children have the right to not be abused. Right? Children have the right. It's a violation of natural rights because children have the right to not be abused. And I might even want to pop in there and add a definition, right? This helps me because I'm making connections. I'm making connections to the topics we talk about in class. I am making connections to what I think is right and wrong. You know, and I'm providing analysis by doing all of this stuff. And that is the hardest part of writing, is often the providing of analysis. Uh, and so if I go to write an essay, now I've got all these annotations. Each one of these can be a sentence in my essay. And I have my enlightenment term, and I have a definition of my enlightenment term, and I have an explanation of how this example is a violation of that enlightenment term. Now, if you're looking at a document, whether it's a picture, text, chart, whatever, and you find you have nothing to say, if you're in my class, that should feel wrong. It should feel dirty and wrong, because you know I never give you anything without giving you resources and context. So that's on you. You go back to my website, you take the topic, Industrial Revolution, you go look at the notes, refresh yourself, right? So if you find you have nothing to annotate in the stuff in my class, again, it should feel dirty and wrong. Go back, fix that. It's not me, it's you. So go back, review notes, see if you're really paying attention to the text. Are you going through the steps of capturing your thoughts? Or are your eyes just going across the page while your brain goes on a vacation somewhere else? Okay, so when you have done this, I fully expect you to go back and go to now comment. I want you to do that on here. So the assignment is for you guys to have 3 primary annotations of 3 different types. So you can have a reaction as long as you explain your reaction. You can post a how or a why question. You can provide definitions, any of that, that's fine. So you want 3 different types of primary annotations. And then I want 3 secondary or tertiary annotations in reply to other people's comments as well, or even reply to your own. Okay. Let's please get in the habit of annotating our texts. And that's also a good way to study as well, is to, when you're taking the notes off the pods, go back, annotate your notes. That will help you internalize the information. That will help you understand the information more deeply. Don't just do this transactional educational approach where you're like, I did the work, give me my grade. That's not going to get you very far, not in my class. And you have very shortly, later this week, an essay that you're going to be writing. So make sure you're doing each step thoroughly as we progress along. Remember, I am here to help you. I am not here to do things for you, but I will help you as long as you are putting the work in and helping yourselves. If you need any assistance, please be sure to send me an email, and that's it for now.